So welcome back again. In this lesson, we're going to talk about core animation keyframe. And that's an animation that essentially moves an object from one keyframe to another one, to another one, to another one, as many of them as you might have. And then you can decide about the timing between them. You can choose to go slower at the beginning, faster at the end, or any other combination that you might want to think of. So to do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and make a very simple project to demonstrate that to you. Let's go to Xcode, and I'm going to start a new app, call it CA Core Keyframe Animation. And in here, I'm going to go to the storyboard, and I want to make an animation that when I press a button, a little object or maybe a UI view passes through certain locations. So here is the premise of what I'm doing. Here is a button. That button, I'm going to place it somewhere up there. I'm not going to worry about the constraints or anything like that. And I'm going to call it animated. So this is called, let me zoom into it, animate it. And it has a background color such as this one, so we can see it more distinctively. Then I have some locations. So for each location, I'm going to make a label. So label, one in here, two in here, three in here, and maybe 4 of them would do. And each of them is going to be called something like 1. This one is called location 2. This is location 3. And this is location 4. Now I'm using this approach, even though this is not the best way of doing anything in animating, simply because I don't want to add extra code to this process. If you wanted to do this in a better way, you should have an array of the locations and use that array as your data essentially and animate based on that. But for me here, I'm only going to go ahead and use these labels as the locations that I want to pass through. I'm going to make them a little bit smaller, and then I will have a UI view, and this is the one I want to actually animate. This is the one that it's maybe 64 by 64 and it is red, so I can actually see it clearly. So this is my animatable object, if you call it. So let's go ahead to the assistant window, and in here, let me close this so I get a little bit better space. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't need any of those. I actually don't need the view did load, so I'm going to get rid of it. And what I do need is adding a function for animate. So that's going to be an action called anim action. And then I need an outlet for the red box. That's going to be called red box. And maybe I duplicate this 4 times. This time a UI label, UI label, UI label, UI label. And these 4, I'm actually going to call them 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like I said, not the best approach, but very clear for what we are doing. So I'm going to go to the view controller and say, let's connect all of these guys together. So in here, I will have 4, which I have to connect it to 4. Let me open the other window so it's easier. So 4 connects to 4, and of course 2 connects to 2, 3 connects to 3, and 1 connects to 1. So now we have all of our outlets properly connected. Let's go back to the programming side, and in here, the first thing I need to do is I need to find the locations of all of these 4. So I'm going to have a var positions array. That's going to be an array of CG points, and it is empty by default. And now, once the view has been properly laid out, and even though this is not the core topic of this lesson, it's a good thing that we ran into it. Once the view properly laid out, we have to find these positions. That means we have to go to view did appear. Once the view has properly appeared, I'm going to say positions array becomes 1.center, 2.center, 3.center, and 4.center. So once the view is properly laid out, I'm going to go ahead and get all the positions. I'm not going to do that on view did load. And I forgot that in the view did appear, I have to call the super.view did appear. So by now we have all the positions. Let's go ahead and see how we're going to actually animate them. This is the function that we have to write the keyframe animation in it. So the keyframe animation is actually rather simple. I'm going to say let animation to be a CA keyframe animation. And that keyframe animation, I'm going to have to give it a keypad. I'm going to say the keypad for it is pound keypad for CA layer dot position. So I want to animate the position using this CA keyframe animation. And then sometime later, and that's not happening just yet, I'm going to have to say redbox dot layer dot add. And I want to add the animation called anim for any key that you want of your own. I'm going to call it my animation because this is a key that we can use it for anything. Once again, this is a key. Those are key paths that they have to exist. These are arbitrary values that we just add on our own, and we can use them to, for instance, pause an animation. So now that animation is actually added to the red box, we have to actually define what are the properties of that animation. I'm going to go ahead and say the first thing we need to know is we need to know when do these things happen. We know we have 4 positions that are going to happen, but when do they happen? So I'm going to say let's call this one times array. And the times array has to have 4 different positions in it. One of them has to be 0 at the very, very beginning. One of them has to be 1 at the end. And then we have to have 2 more in between them. So the 2 in between, I'm going to say, let's have them go very slow at the beginning, 0.8, and then 0.9 and 1. So between the first keyframe, which is 1, and the second one, which is 2, we're going to take 0.8 of the time, nearly 80% of the time. Then we're going to go to the next one and the next one really quickly. So that part is taken care of. I'm going to go ahead and say anim.values become the values that we have in the positions array. So they become the values in the positions array. And then we have anim.key times, the times in which we want to run this animation becomes, and here is an important thing. I don't know if you noticed it. When we were going to write the key times, it said it has to be NS number, while my array is actually floats. So I'm going to say, give me the times array as an array of NS numbers. So I'm going to convert the floats into NS numbers on the fly. So now we got the key times taken care of. I need the animation duration, anim.duration. Let's give it a larger number so we can actually see the animation happening. And then we can actually have an animation mode. So I'm going to say anim.animation calculation mode, which has to be a CA animation calculation mode. And I'm going to say the mode of it, let's make it linear for now. So that's all we had to do. Introduce a new CA keyframe animation, decide about the times and the locations, decide about the duration, and add it to whichever object that we want to add it to. Let's go ahead and run this to see how it fares now. So now if I press the animate button, it goes from 1 to 2 really slowly in 0.8 of the time, and then between those other 2 really quickly. Now pay attention to something, how it is going between 1 to 2. It's going in a very linear way, as if it's going directly from 1 to 2 and 3 and 4. Then I'm going to come in here and change the calculation type to cubic. And let's see how it changes now. Now pay attention of how it goes between 1 to 2. It goes and then comes down, as if it is trying to make a Bezier curve as it reaches each of the points. So once again, if we look at it, it clearly shows that how it is going between the different points. And that's essentially what the calculation mode does for us. Linear simply means from this point to that point, go straight. Cubic obviously produces a more curved approach or a more curved paths of animation. So now there's something else you might be wondering about, and that is how come when I press the animate button, it goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and then it jumps back where it used to be. How come it doesn't stay around where number 4 is? And that's something we have to do manually. Also, if you wanted to, you could actually write the code to place it on top of 1 at the very beginning. So let me do both of these in one go essentially. So I'm going to go to view that appear. Once I have all the positions, I'm going to say redbox.center becomes positions array location 0. So make sure that at the very beginning, the moment the view appears, you place the red box exactly where 1 is. So that's one part of the problem. And if we run the application now, we should see that happening right away. We should see that the red box at the very beginning, it is sitting exactly where number 1 is. So that part is taken care of. Now let's go ahead to our animation and say anim.delegate, and it's of the type CA animation delegate. I'm going to say self. So it's delegating its animations to here, and we have to add a protocol of CA animation delegate to it. So my class view controller will have access to the methods from CA animation delegate, and one of those many methods is this one, animation did stop. So here, the moment the animation stops, it will make an announcement. And what we want to do in there is this, redbox.center becomes positions array number 3, or better yet, positions array.count -1. This is a more dynamic way of doing this, and it makes sure that we get the last position. So let's go ahead and rerun this one. And now by these two methods, by adding the first location and knowing the stopping point, we should be going between these and stay at the very end. So we go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and we stay there. And that's about that. So this is the basic keyframe animation, and let's move on to our next lesson.